Hello, Doctor Who fans across the world, and welcome to another brilliant episode of Who Corner to Corner. We are your hosts. I am Paul L, and I'm here with my usual colleague, Geoff C, who's looking incredibly happy today. Are you happy, Geoff? I hope that's... Yes, that is a smile! Look at that.
I'm a bit blue as well. Look.
You're very blue. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of appropriate, probably, for what we're going to be talking about today, to be honest. And he slides something over the screen, which is really professional, mate. Yeah. It's, we've only been doing this for what, 2-3 years now? 3 years?
3. Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
Not as bad as your pen for focus.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, do you know? I spent a fortune on this blooming webcam as well, and it's shit, really. It still hasn't made me look any more handsome than I already am, but what can improve on perfection? Eh? Oh, I don't know. So today we are going to be looking at, we're going to be spending a bit of time looking at the wonderful story, one of my favourites and one of the absolutely most batshit bonkers, excuse my French, but there's no other way to describe it, stories of the entire Doctor Who run forever. It's the Happiness Patrol, which is, as I'm sure you all know, part of the rather marvellous Season 25 box set, which was only recently released just a couple of weeks ago, I think now. I haven't actually worked my way through this yet. Have you started watching it, Geoff?
No, as with all of them, they are mammoth, which is good. But when you're...
Loads of contents, loads of VAM.
Yes.
As Chris Chapman called it, isn't it?
And when you're time poor, trying to get through them is a bit difficult, really. So
time poor. That's a very corporate...
Yes.
Corporate word, that, isn't it? Eh? Time poor with time poor and asset rich. Yeah. And of course, these are brilliant. We've got some lovely artwork by the wonderful Lee Binding, who we've interviewed on the show. Just look through our back catalogue, you'll see that. It's a fabulous interview. And of course, as you know, lots of lovely Blu-rays inside, plus this kind of pull-out sort of leaflets. I say leaflets, actually an entire book, which I just dropped on the floor, which is full of good stuff. See, so, and of course, this box set has not only all the original episodes of season 25, which is the 25th anniversary season of Doctor Who, but it has new editions, special editions as well, with brand new effects, different cuts, and all sorts of lovely new documentaries by Chris Chapman and various other people, interviews, and it's just a plethora of Doctor Who goodness. For heaven's sake, we are so spoiled, are we not? We really are spoiled. Yeah.
Have you looked at anything on it yet?
I have indeed, yeah. Although I've only actually looked at the Happiness Patrol, which is a story we're going to be looking at in this episode, or at least we're going to start to look at it, because as Geoff has already said, he is time poor. So we have limited time with which to talk about this story. So, shall we crack on with it without any further ado?
So we're going to take a look at part 1 of the Happiness Patrol this week on the podcast. So if you want to watch along as we commentate our way through
interactive,
please do. So if you load it up on your playback system of choice, you can pick from VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, or streaming, and then you can watch with us.
Watch along, people. Oh yeah.
I'll do a 3, 2, 1, and then we can hit play.
Go on, then. 3, 2, 1. This is simple. That's what I like.
How wrong we get this. Well. So 3, 2, 1. There we go.
There we go. Look at that. I've got Doctor Who titles. I've got the Spinny Universe. What do you think of this, McCoy?
I really like this.
You like it, do you?
There's some very primitive kind of CG stuff in here, isn't there? And I think it looks really cool. For its time, but even now I think it still looks pretty good,
Imagine this on a big screen. It would be pretty disorientating, wouldn't it? Because you kind of flip over, you do almost like a full 180 through this galactic plane. You zoom in on top of it, you go underneath it, the TARDIS spins, everything's moving. It's pretty good. I think was it Oliver Elms who put this thing together, and it was painstaking, graphic designer. I think he was a freelancer. So I think the BBC was starting to outsource stuff then. Go on, what you say?
What do you think of that version of the Who logo?
I must admit, I've never been its biggest fan. It wouldn't be my most favourite of the Who logos. What about you?
I kind of like it. I like that Who is big and chunky and metallic looking, and CGI. But it's it's quite different, isn't it? From the rest of the kind of logo.
It's
that the
very
show's.
1980s. It's very of its time,
Yeah,
I
it is
think.
very 80s. But then I say that, and my favourite version of the logo, unsurprisingly, is the Whitaker era. I really liked that.
Just a
The
font. Well,
thinner
it's not
font
quite
and
just a font, is it?
the cracks around it and stuff like that. And
It's got a bit of design.
yeah, and it looked really good, I think. What do you think of the current kind of retro flavoured logo that they've got?
I'd rather it was a new one, not going to lie.
Yeah.
The diamond logo is iconic, and it wouldn't be the first time that a Doctor Who logo from the old series has been reused in the current. I'd say, see Paul McGann's story reused the third Doctor's logo with a slight update, and it was fine. It was on the branding for years after. So, it's not unprecedented, but just give us something new,
I mean, they have sort of changed, the Doctor and Who for Shooty, and it looks quite good the way the Who is, a bit bigger again. Looks a bit like
maybe,
one.
yeah, maybe.
But it would have been nice if he had his own distinctive thing.
Exactly, it gives his Doctor a bit more of an identity, doesn't it? I suppose rather than slavishly kind of copying what's gone in the past. But we are talking over the story, Geoff.
Yes,
we're not talking about the happiness patrol, and we need to be happy and talk about the story. So we just talked over this kind of establishing shot where which kind of sets the tone for the story, and we've got another thing here with the Doctor and Ace. So Silas P, it turns out, is a bit of a nasty piece of work. He's just shopped somebody who's feeling very sad to the happiness patrol, and now the Doctor and Ace kind of turn up on the planet Terra Alpha, which was quite obviously a studio, isn't it? This is a totally 100% studio bound story, totally reliant on BBC sets, atmosphere, camera work, lighting, and all that kind of thing to sort of give it its atmosphere. What do you make of that, Geoff C?
Well, this is it's already looking quite sort of atmospheric, and there's quite a nice little set there. It's got a couple of levels to it. It's quite dark and shadowy, and then contrasting already quite nicely to this, which is admittedly quite sort of quote bland lighting, but I suspect that it's supposed
pastel-y
to be
pinks of Helen A's
and it's bright and
office.
I guess sort of happier. But when we spoke with Al Dewar, when we commented through some Sixth Doctor episodes recently, and we kind of noticed the uptick in the kind of lighting and cinematic quality on that, didn't we? Bearing in mind budget and all the other limitations they had. But here with the bowler hatted chap there, and it looks really good, I think.
Trevor Sigma, played by John Normington, who was Morgus in Caves of Androzani. He was the big bad guy in that story. So he's the first one of these guys we meet who'd been in Doctor Who previously. I think, do you know what I mean? I was watching, talking about the 25th anniversary collection box set. I was watching the special edition of this, and it's quite interesting because it takes a little bit longer to get to this point, mostly by expanding the establishing shots. So that first shot we had there of the kind of streets of Terra Alpha. Kind of panned down from a whole bunch of tech noir, very dark city kind of skyscrapers. It starts at the top, sort of works down. So we have a sense of there being an open sky to these streets more than we do here. But I kind of think, actually, I like and probably prefer the more claustrophobic setting of the original in that sense. I mean, I love the new graphics and everything. I think they're gorgeous, and they do add a sense of scale to the story. But I think what they lose perhaps is this kind of oppressive atmosphere, this very kind of almost Kafkaesque kind of thing that is kind of running through the whole story.
What do you think about this thing of taking older episodes and recutting them and changing things, adding new effects and things like that? We did talk briefly once about the Daleks in colour, the edit that was done by well, it came out a little while ago, didn't it?
It did.
And I'm not sure I saw any kind of majorly positive take on
Oh,
it.
there was a bit of positive stuff. I think quite a few people did like it. I think it depends on. I mean, okay. So the first part of your question, generally, I love the idea of it. You know, the original still exists, so that can always be watched. You know, and now we've got a new version of it. And of course, in the 70s and 80s, well, mostly in the 70s, they would quite often do like an omnibus cut of a long story, like you know, things like the Green Death and Genesis of the Daleks. They take a whole plot line out and then just reassemble it. So it is quite interesting, and then you've got things whereby, like this, for example, the Happiness Patrol and Remembrance of the Daleks, and all the stories on this box set have their own special edition with new features and stuff, and they're alternatives, and I think they're interesting. But they stand or fail really by the quality of the edits. You know, does the new version of the story give you a new take on it? Does it allow you to enjoy it in a slightly different way? Does it allow you to see something that didn't quite make it in the original version? You know, or is it just somebody's passion project, and you know, this is how they think the story should now be cut, which I think was, you know, maybe the case with the Daleks in colour. I don't know. I mean, the Daleks in colour was a slightly different thing. I think I wasn't enamoured by that, and I wasn't enamoured by it for two reasons. Mostly because I thought the actual edit itself was not great. I think it lost the heart and soul of the story. You know, yes, it was faster paced, but there was so much lost out of it that it was just not right. You know, if you want a fast edition of the Daleks, the original story, watch the Peter Cushing movie. You know, that's essentially what it is. You know, and it's in colour. It just doesn't have William Hartnell or the crew in it, but you know, that's what that is. And I thought some of the editing choices were a bit weird, but that's just my opinion. Other people liked them. But I think more than anything, what I disliked about the Daleks in colour was the fact that it seemed to imply, and maybe there's some truth in this, I don't know, but that in order to enjoy the old classics, especially those from the 60s, they had to be shown in a way that that mirrors the modern series, so it matches the pacing, you know, the fastness, the speed of it. There was a lot of cuts in the Daleks whereby, you know, the Doctor was explaining stuff, and then we'd see a snippet from earlier on in the episode spliced into the narrative at that point, which is kind of weird. And that to me implies that people are too stupid enough to actually see the connections, or maybe the thing moves too fast for people to actually see the connections. You know, at the end of the day, I just think, tell the story. You know, just tell the story as it's scripted or as you want, and then just kind of leave it. Because I think also the downside with a lot of these additional effects is that they look as dated as the original stuff, because, you know, they don't have a huge budget to put new effects on these things. And, you know, when you're talking about grand alien vistas, skyscrapers and all sorts of things, as we do in this story, there's a real danger that actually they look cheap and kind of spoiled the immersion, which I think for me was the case in this story. You know, that was quite a long-winded answer, wasn't it? Sorry, mate, I took up most of the episode.
I don't know.
And we're talking over Harold Innocent as well, you know, and his fondant surprise.
I don't know how I feel about it really, because I feel like I'm like the only person out there who's like, I still buy CDs. I don't like AI. I don't like, you know, rehashing old things. And
yes.
And I sort of think a little bit like you said. The episode is, you know, it's what it is. And where does this sort of thing end?
Well, that's it. Yeah, I agree.
Do we go back through all the old Who and chop them up for, you know, a TikTok audience, and, you know, apply you know, liberal doses of making it, you know, simpler for dumbos or something, and you know, assuming that no one can follow it properly, and then where does it go from there? Do we start taking, you know, It's a Wonderful Life and recutting that, and, you know, taking Wizard of Oz and chopping that back up, and, you know, just plundering the back catalogue of things, and, you know, in an effort to make it more modern, you know, sticking these new effects in and things on the sort of thought that, well, a younger audience won't watch it because it's old, but then you're only presenting them this sort of somewhat monstrosity version, and I saw you replied to a tweet the other day. I think there someone had put a picture of one of the indie films, and Indiana Jones, and had said, "Oh, I put this on at work," and the youth in the place said, "Turn this off. It looks old, and the camera's
The
bad,"
camera's rubbish. Yeah.
And you think, well, yes, compared to today's stuff, it is. But the way it's filmed, the story, the acting, all of that is still as good.
Exactly.
And
it was a landmark when it first arrived. It was. That in itself was a remake of all those 1930s kind of serial adventure TV things, old cinema things.
But what do you do? You go, people who are under 15 won't watch Indiana Jones, so let's recut it to make it, hyper fast and all this sort of thing. And I just think, it is what it is. That's what it was. But yeah, I know people won't watch old stuff because they don't like the quality of it. Which is...
I think all of us, we've all got our own reactions to these things, and I think,
well, yes, you're right,
my reaction is not the same to every single edited or special edition version, or it's updated CGI effects and everything else. I think if they're done nice and subtly, they can work. Things like the Dalek invasion of Earth, or the BBC version has some great CGI in it, but it doesn't look out of place in a black and white 1960s episode. The Dalek saucer looks like a slightly less shaky, 1960s designed UFO. It looks great, and things like that. They'll update some of the laser guns because they were always quite ropey in the old days. So that's all fine. Remembrance of the Daleks has some updates, but very, very few. I think what they did actually enhances. This one is slightly different. The Happiness Patrol is an alternative cut with with some new effects that does give you a much bigger sense of scale, as I've said. But and I do like it. I watched it last night from start to finish, and I did enjoy it. I thought it probably slowed the story down a little bit. But it did give us a little bit more character because there was some other bits kind of popped in that hadn't made the first cut. Yeah. So it's there for us all. As long as the original's still there, then it's a thing. Yeah. So this is quite a nice scene actually. Here we're sort of talking over this, aren't we? So we're in the waiting zone because obviously Terra Alpha doesn't have prisons. It has a waiting zone, and the Doctor and Ace, they're not prisoners, but they step over that line and they'll be blasted to Kingdom Come. And this is quite a nice take. And we're just seeing a guy get blasted, electrified by a gambling slot machine thing. So it's really dark. It's a very, very dark story, this. There's a lot of, this, and I love the idea that we've got a facade of happiness and glitzy pastel colours and everything else, which Helena kind of tries to perpetuate through her own reign of terror. And actually the reality is that this is a very dark place. It's ruled by an oppressive government. You step out of line, you're pretty much executed. And that method of execution that we saw, again, we were talking over it, the tube being lowered over the head, and then that tube being kind of flooded by hot fondant sweetie stuff is really grim, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
This is dark stuff, I think.
Yeah, that was a gunging.
The gunging of death.
Yeah,
and the fact that was it Gilbert M, Helena's husband? He licks it. Not Gilbert M. It was Gilbert M, wasn't it? I've just seen it. I wasn't paying attention, obviously, but licks it and goes, strawberry. It's nasty.
Who call that
Joseph C.
In the cage there.
Fifi.
So
Fifi the Stigarax. I think is she a Stigarax or something like that? That just pops into my mind. Yeah, this is a puppet, isn't it? An animatronic puppet, which sort of works as well as animatronic puppets ever used to work in the 80s. Yeah, I think
they had must have been the original puppet, cleaned up and stuff at the recent screening of this at the BFI.
They did at the BFI. Yeah.
It looked quite cool.
It did, yeah, and now we're in a go-kart, aren't we?
What do you think of the Candy Man?
I love the Candyman. I do. I think he's brilliant. I remember, I think, as you remember when we spoke to Andrew Cartmel quite recently, and he knew this story was going out, by the way, because he kind of let it slip. I think that season 25 was due any minute, as a box set collection. But anyway, remember, we were talking about, the whole fact that he was like a Bertie Bassett, like a well-known sweet. There was lawsuits and everything kind of kicking off, wasn't there? And I wasn't aware that it had been settled. But I remember, and because this was out when I was in sixth form, because I'm really that old. Yeah. And I remember going into school and, my mates were sort of talking about it, and, my mates weren't into this at all. They thought it was absolute crap. They just honestly, I can't, they hated Sylvester McCoy's Doctor.
Really?
And it was, I just never got involved in those conversations. But because, I'm the Doctor Who fan in the room, it's like, well, what do you think of it, Paul, last night? It was shit, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. It's brilliant. We were studying Franz Kafka's novel, The Trial, at the same time, round about the same time as this went out, and I could see the parallels. The superficial stuff, even in the names, right? Joseph C, Helen A, and you've got Joseph K in The Trial. And a lot of the Kafkaesque kind of themes. The sense of this massive oppression. Telling you what you can and can't do, giving you instructions. You must behave like this without giving you any reason for it. It's just and the whole trial thing is a guy wakes up, finds himself on trial for it, and he doesn't know what crime he's committed, just that he's committed a crime, and nobody knows, and he tries to find out, and he gets sent down these bureaucratic corridors of ever-increasing darkness. And it's, you think if that was ever filmed, I'm not sure if it has been, but it would feel a bit like this. It would be definitely a very dark city, very noirish and very oppressive and very grim. And I love, actually, just on this, coming into it, the sound of the harmonica that kind of resonates through this, and I love the way he kind of picks it up there from a soulful bluesy tune to something a bit more upbeat. Apparently he couldn't play the harmonica; they had to dub it on afterwards.
Really?
Yeah, they originally wanted it. I think originally it was scripted as a trumpet player, so he would be playing the trumpet, but he couldn't play trumpet either. So they thought, well, a harmonica, he can mime it. We can just lay it over, rather than try and match the fingering that you do in the trumpet.
Yeah.
Now this is who's this? This is her name. What's her name? Leslie Dunlop, playing Susie Q. As a reference, isn't it?
I sort of recognise.
She's been in lots of things. She was in Frontiers, the Fifth Doctor story, a few years before this.
Right.
She was a character on Frontiers. Norma, I think her name was, something like that. And she was in a sitcom from May to December, which ran for years and years and years. And I think that featured William Gaunt, who was in Revelation of the Daleks that we looked at a little while ago. Yeah. I might have to look that up, actually, because I'm not entirely 100% sure about that. But it was a big sitcom that was around at the time, and it just went on for years and years. And she was in loads of other stuff. She was quite a familiar face. And of course, here she becomes Ace's friend. She's Ace's only friend in his story. And look at her face there. She's given Ace the key to escape. And now she feels sad because she knows she's probably sent Ace to her death, perhaps. And this was a real go-kart that they used in there. It wasn't like an electric thing. It actually had a petrol engine in it. Like,
oh, really?
You could fill it up with like a pint of petrol, so it was minimising the fire risk if it exploded. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So... apparently it was a couple of hairy biker dudes who kind of came in and set it up. I think they'd done some work on Delta and the Bannermen, and they came in and did this one, and they're big sort of tattooed kind of Hell's Angels types, of sort of fixing the thing. So here we've got the Doctor and Silas P. And Silas P, as we know, is a double agent, isn't he? He's one of these nasty pieces of work who kind of fishes people out, pretending to be one of them, raising their hopes, and then showing them that he's actually working for the enemy. Nasty piece of work.
Yeah, this looks really good, doesn't it? It's very...
I think it does. Yeah,
film noirish in a way. And
very much so.
Maybe
weirdly, it reminds me of that film The Dark City by what's his name? Is it Alex somebody or other? Alex Proyas. That's him. but I thought they were around about the same sort of time, but they weren't actually. Dark City was 10 years after this. It was like right at the end of the 90s, whereas this is towards the end of the 80s, isn't it?
Mm.
But it definitely, picks from the same kind of trope, if you like, or bucket of tropes,
Yeah.
which go right back to like 1930s, 1920s, sort of Raymond Chandler kind of thing. I think originally director Chris Clough wanted angles on this. So you see there's a bit of an angle there on the window, right, where the camera, like in the old Batman series where everything's kind of filmed at a slight tilt. But I think John Nathan Turner said no because it was too confusing. Really? Yeah. I think, again, it might not be.
It's probably a bit out of place for, who even, at this time, even when they're sort of adventurous with it, it's still, traditional in the way it's filmed.
It is,
I mean?
yeah, to a point though, because I think Chris Clough would have preferred single camera because you look at this set here. There's a lot going on in the sets. The sets are filled.
Is there some matte work or something on
it? Is what? Sorry.
Is there some matte work on that, to expand it? Or
no, not at all. No, it's that's all live set in sets, if you like. So they had to build that set, fill it, and then have space for cameras. The 3 big pedestal mounted multi-camera setup that they had. So, it's a lot to squeeze in, and I think I haven't watched the interviews yet. Maybe Chris Clough kind of expands on it, but I think you would have preferred to have a single camera set up rather than the multicam thing. Now this is Gilbert M, isn't it? And I love this kind of interplay between him and the Candyman. There's a bit more of this in the extended version, the special edition on the Blu-ray, and it's brilliant. It's just their relationship is bizarre because Gilbert M created the Candyman, right? And there's this throwaway line in part 3 where he says he bought his bones in a suitcase, from this other place on the world where he was exiled from for being, for inventing some population killing germ or something. So clearly Gilbert M, this doddery old, chubby sort of balding old fella, created an absolute psycho robot.
Yeah, I can't look at its eyes. They're the worst part of it.
I know, yeah, and the voice and everything, the whizzy eyes, the fact it looks like something we eat is just bizarre.
Yeah, it reminds me
I love that. It's brilliant.
What's his name? Christopher Lloyd in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, when he takes his eyes pop out. And then his real eyes are all swirly. God, what's his name in it? I love that film, and I've completely blanked on it.
I can't remember. It's a long time since I watched that.
Yeah, really? It's a great film.
Yeah, I think I've only watched it once, to be honest.
Judge Doom. I was thinking it's not Doctor Doom, but yeah.
But I know the thing, because I think it's been an endless one of those memes that goes throughout social media nowadays, isn't it? It's one of the most used GIFs or something.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting. So so that's 24 minutes ish that runs at, and I think the special edition runs at 30 minutes per episode. There's a lot of stuff that they put into it. Yeah, and a lot of it is establishing shots. They've opened up the world a lot more, like I said, with the skyscrapers and all sorts of things going on, spaceships and what have you. So it does look really nice, but it's definitely worth watching alongside. If you've got the patience and the time to do it, if you're not time poor like Geoff, watch both. It's a lot of fun.
Well, we'll come back and finish in the 2 parts on this, and then maybe I can make time to watch the special version, to then compare them.
Of course you can. It just means you got to stay up until like 4 o'clock in the morning to get through your DVD collection and play all the games that you got to play and watch all the TV shows you got to watch and listen to the music you got to listen to. Yeah.
And get the kids to bed, and then have an evening.
Yeah, get the kids to bed, and then take something that'll keep you awake for 6 hours. This is not good lifestyle advice, though. No, people, do not do this.
It works for you.
It's not good for you.
So we had a few comments on Facebook, didn't we, about this episode?
Sort of, yeah. I kind of put a post out generally about the season 25 box setting generally, saying who's been watching, what are your fave moments so far, what have you watched, and what are you enjoying. There's a bit of stuff coming back. Mark Webster on Facebook has come back and says the special editions are the standouts for him. They are absolutely brilliant. Richard Hardman says obviously Remembrance is a standout. However, he says a story that I've not liked anywhere near as much is the Happiness Patrol.
I saw that.
But I've watched the special edition a couple of times, and the extra footage and the new effects have really improved the story. Not watched all the discs yet. It's a really good set, and I really should have brought a glass of water up before I started this podcast, but I didn't, so apologies. I've just had a really bad cold I've just come out of, and it's not quite shifted yet. I don't need your pity. I don't need your sympathy. I'm not Fifi.
Send your pity tweets to Paul.
Yeah, pity me, please. Please feel sorry for me. But that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that actually, and so let's do part 2 and 3 very soon. It's only a short story, so we can fit the next one on a single podcast, I would say.
Yes, we will do that, and we'll also be doing some more classic commentary with Al again soon, won't we? So
yes, and hopefully one or two other people as well. Yes. Watch this space.
Yes, so looking forward to that. So. As always, thank you for listening or watching, depending on how you consume this podcast.
Consume. Geoff, what is it? What is it with you? You're not a corporate shill. Come on, my friend. Just remember one thing. Happiness will prevail. See you next time, and keep smiling.
Consume.